My reaction, I think, will surprise you guys. First of all, I do understand what he was saying about, and I bet you do too. If you put it to your career, looking at other receivers, it gets me upset. When you're competitive, the last thing you want to see is your opponents winning everything and, you know what I mean, shining. Not in a selfish way, but they're your opponent. It'd be different if it's a team.
That's why I have rivals.
Well, that's true, but so I get that.
That's correct.
And then now I could be wrong. I don't think it comes off like Saquon's catching a stray. All right, like I don't think he's ripping Saquon. I think he's like, well, by that logic, I mean Saquon's number, like,
and he definitely has.
Right.
I agree.
Exactly. So I don't think.
I agree with that too. It's
now
just
it doesn't come off well at all, right?
Yeah.
To answer your question, I actually don't think this will impact the game. Now, I think Dallas is going to win.
Oh.
I think Dallas is going to win this game. It's not my upset alert. I had to go big game hunting. But I think Dallas is going to win the game, but I think they're just going to win because it's a division rival. Dallas is starting to play well. They're motivated. They got a sign of hope out there.
Yep.
And Philly's kind of due for a loss. The question is, will this send the locker room spiraling even more than it is now? That's going to be the big question. But I don't think it's going to be because AJ didn't do anything. I actually think he may have a decent game. I just think it's going to be Dallas wins this game, not because of anything AJ said or did.
I am starting to become more and more convinced that while A.J. Brown is maybe at times a clumsy messenger, that he has more support in that locker room than
That's a good take.
than a lot of the media seems to believe.
He's not just lone wolfing it out there.
It is very difficult for me to believe. I understand A.J. Brown is an all-pro player and an alpha and, a leader in that locker room by virtue of his accolades and his experience. If it was pretty universally agreed upon in that locker room, this guy's out of line, it would be policed differently.
I would think so.
There are too many other guys that have accolades. They all have rings too. That to be like, hey, this has to stop. To where the report would be, there was a confrontation in the locker room. You know what I mean? Between somebody and that's not what's happening. And so again, and I want to be very clear. Not only is this not reporting, it's not even like whispered insight. Like, this is just my own personal intuition. That folks like, man, I'm glad AJ's taking the bullets for us on this one. AJ.
All right, let's try to process this. Goodness gracious. Where does one even begin to unpack all of this? We are currently experiencing an absolute deluge of pure chaos and profoundly distorted logic. Let's just start at the most logical point of origin. The recent comments from A.J. Brown. He expressed frustration about watching other receivers around the league find success, and his perception that people are misrepresenting his own situation. Let's be clear, that reaction is fundamental human nature. That is raw, unadulterated competitiveness. It's the driving force behind any elite athlete. Regardless of who you are, of course it's going to irritate him. He is a competitor. He wants to win. He desires the statistics, the yardage, the accolades. He wants everything. That mentality is not only understandable, but necessary to achieve the heights that a player of A.J. Brown's caliber reaches. Now, let's address his comment regarding Saquon Barkley, specifically the remark, "Oh, is Saquon falling off?" I believe this particular statement exists in a gray area. It's both somewhat defensible and simultaneously problematic. I don't interpret it as a deliberate, targeted shot, but it still raises the question, why bring Saquon into this conversation at all? Why deliberately shine a spotlight on a teammate's current lack of production? It's an unnecessary maneuver because it immediately redirects the focus and scrutiny onto Saquon's struggles, which is fundamentally unfair. What has Saquon Barkley done to warrant that kind of public questioning or that type of negative attention? Furthermore, it's not difficult to imagine the immediate fallout. Reporters now rushing to Saquon to ask, "This is what A.J. Brown said about you. How do you feel?" It creates needless noise and distraction within the team environment. Simultaneously, the underlying point A.J. Brown was likely trying to make is, you don't think Saquon is declining, so why do you think I am? And it's true. There are external voices, like Nick Wright, who have publicly claimed that Saquon is falling off, that he looks fatigued and less motivated than when he first departed New York. So, those conversations are already circulating in the media ecosystem. Last season, when A.J. Brown was asked to diagnose the offensive issues, he pinpointed the passing game. He didn't blame the running game. This season, both the passing and the running games are underperforming. By this distorted logic, that would somehow also be Jalen Hurts' fault. So, where does the blame ultimately reside? By invoking another player's name, you are essentially using them as a pawn in a larger rhetorical game. A player like Saquon Barkley has only a limited amount of control over his own production, let alone the entire offensive scheme. To drag him into this is something I find distasteful. I believe the comment was poorly worded and ill-advised. However, I must also be fair and acknowledge that I do not hold athletes, coaches, or even general managers to the same standard of media literacy and conversational nuance as I would a full-time analyst. Navigating a microphone and a loaded question is not their primary expertise. They are far more likely to misspeak or put their foot in their mouth than a seasoned commentator like Nick Wright or even myself. It's not a stretch to suggest that I am more skilled at steering through these complex, sensitive discussions than an elite football player whose job is to be an elite football player. Our life experiences have demanded the acquisition of entirely different skill sets. If you were to rank us on the ability to handle press conferences effectively, myself, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Colin Cowherd, Nick Wright, most of the players would likely not be at the top of that list. Many other individuals could probably navigate those waters more smoothly. I always strive to maintain this perspective. I possess a specific skill in deconstructing these conversations, just as Colin does. And perhaps a veteran quarterback like Dak Prescott or Patrick Mahomes has honed that ability. But I would not expect every single person, including Jalen Hurts, to be a master orator. I leave room for athletes to fumble over their words and occasionally get tangled in their own messages. However, there is a crucial caveat. When you choose to speak as frequently and as candidly as A.J. Brown does, you receive significantly less benefit of the doubt from me. That is the critical distinction. If a less vocal player like Dallas Goedert came out and made a similar gaffe, my reaction would be more lenient. I'd think, yeah, Dallas, maybe that wasn't the best thing to say, but I wouldn't hold his feet to the fire. But if you are consistently putting yourself out there, repeatedly engaging with the media, then the expectation shifts. You had better know how to talk. You must develop the ability to navigate nuance and complexity. You must also possess a fundamental understanding that your words carry weight. They have a tangible impact and directly influence the actions of others, particularly media members who will now investigate and amplify your statements. If you're going to be a frequent voice, you had better learn how to wield that voice responsibly. Now, this leads to the broader, invented narrative that if people in the organization truly disapproved of A.J. Brown's comments, he would be silenced. When have the Philadelphia Eagles ever demonstrated that kind of authoritarian, top-down policing of speech? This specific Eagles team has consistently operated with a collaborative ethos. Remember, it was this very team that during the bye week following the Buccaneers game approached head coach Nick Sirianni with the offensive line involved and collectively stated, "We want to run the ball more." That was a player-driven initiative. And guess what? It proved to be the correct decision. That is the culture. This is precisely why I stopped that particular clip of speculation. I have no desire to operate in a space where we are engaged in outright fabrication. We are now venturing into the realm of pure, unsubstantiated speculation layered upon more speculation. It devolves into the equivalent of a tabloid you'd see at a grocery store checkout line. I'm not even talking about People magazine or US Weekly. I'm referring to those publications with outrageous headlines about celebrities communicating with aliens. That is the absurd level this conversation has reached. It becomes a messy guessing game. Who do they blame? Who has issues with whom? Is it Jalen, the coach, this person, that person? I have already produced a comprehensive video diving deep into this, supported by concrete data. I demonstrated that A.J. Brown faces more contested targets than virtually any other elite receiver in the league. I also showed that, on those contested targets, his catch percentage is lower than the vast majority of his peers, like Puka Nakua. Furthermore, the statistics reveal he is ranked second worst in the entire NFL in average separation from a defender at the moment the ball arrives. He is consistently operating in tight window situations. Therefore, if A.J. Brown is upset, the logical conclusion points in one of two directions. First, he needs to elevate his individual performance in those one-on-one battles. Or second, he needs to have a direct conversation with the coaching staff about scheme and play design. The persistent, obsessive effort to redirect all frustration toward Jalen Hurts is becoming profoundly obnoxious. Let there be no misunderstanding. That is the ultimate destination this manufactured narrative is trying to reach. A path we started down several days ago and which continues to be propagated. I intend to analyze another segment, as requested by a viewer, focusing on a first-take discussion, featuring Cam Newton and Dan Orlovsky. That analysis will concentrate more specifically on Jalen Hurts and the offensive performance. But the fundamental truth remains. The offensive line has not performed well. The coaching has not been exceptional. And A.J. Brown has not performed at an elite level this season. We can attempt to deflect responsibility all we want. This is not to claim that Jalen Hurts has been flawless. That is not my argument. However, Jalen Hurts' job has been made exponentially more difficult by the circumstances around him. And it is not his sole responsibility to magically transcend those systemic failures. We do not hold Patrick Mahomes to that standard. We do not hold Lamar Jackson to that standard. We do not hold Josh Allen to that standard. At this juncture, it is the responsibility of everyone else involved to ask, how can we make the quarterback's job easier? Because we are currently making it far too hard. The data is unequivocal. Jalen Hurts' receivers are among the least open in the entire NFL. His primary wide receiver, A.J. Brown, is, by statistical definition, one of the most heavily covered players in the league. That failure cannot be placed at the feet of the quarterback. The responsibility lies with the coaching staff for the scheme and the individual players for their execution. Fix those foundational issues. Then you can talk all you want about your frustrations and the support you have in the locker room. Let's also be realistic. The players who support you might themselves be part of the underlying problem. It is not their job to diagnose the intricate schematic or execution-based failures. If you have support in the locker room, it does not automatically mean your teammates fundamentally understand the root of the problem. That is not what they are paid to do. It is not Jalen Carter's job to analyze why the run game is failing or why receivers can't gain separation. He is not spending his nights poring over offensive film. That is not his area of expertise. This is how specialized modern football has become. Even the legendary Bill Belichick, as Tom Brady has recounted, was sometimes playfully mocked by his players for not fully grasping complex offensive terminology. And this is one of the greatest defensive masterminds in the history of the sport. So this talk of support is largely meaningless. What are we even inventing here? If he truly lacked support, what would that look like? There would be physical altercations in the locker room. A.J. Brown would be ostracized, eating his meals alone. What fantasy scenario are we constructing? Why do we feel the incessant need to invent drama where it may not exist? It is entirely unnecessary and borders on collective insanity. Regardless of what happens for the remainder of the season, even if the Philadelphia Eagles lose every single game from this point forward and Jalen Hurts posts historically bad numbers in a complete doomsday scenario, the conversations being had right now and the manner in which they are being conducted are fundamentally flawed and incorrect. I am stating this unequivocally. If the worst-case scenario unfolds, people will inevitably point and say, "See, you were wrong. I told you so." But they will be missing the point. They were having the wrong conversation from the very beginning, approaching the problem from a completely erroneous angle. That is how far removed the current discourse is from the necessary factual analysis. I have done my utmost to recalibrate this discussion repeatedly, steering it back toward evidence and reason. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What is your perspective on the Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown's public frustrations, and the potential impact this will have on their upcoming matchup against the Dallas Cowboys? Let me know your opinions in the comment section below. I read every single comment, so whether you find yourself in agreement with me or you think I'm completely off base, let me know. We can get into some lively discussions, we can engage in some spirited debates, but ultimately, let's remember to have some fun with it all. Please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to have you as a part of it. I want to build something that we all feel genuinely connected to, something we're truly excited and proud to be involved in. I believe we are well on our way to achieving that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely helps with the visibility and the platform's algorithm. Thank you so much for watching.